Let's examine two recently discovered critical vulnerabilities in 7-Zip, one of the most widely used file compression utilities in the world. These vulnerabilities are tracked as CVE 2025-11001 and CVE 2025-11002. This is a particularly important case study because 7-Zip is installed on hundreds of millions of computers worldwide. It's trusted software that many users and organizations rely on daily for compressing and extracting files. When vulnerabilities are discovered in software this ubiquitous, the potential impact is enormous. These two vulnerabilities are especially concerning because they allow for remote code execution, meaning an attacker can execute arbitrary code on your system simply by getting you to open a specially crafted archive file. You don't need to extract the contents, install anything additional, or take any action beyond opening the malicious archive. That makes these vulnerabilities extremely dangerous. By the end of this lesson, you'll understand what these vulnerabilities are, you'll conceptually understand how they work technically and what makes them so dangerous, and we'll have discussed how they can be exploited and ways to protect yourself and your organization. This is real-world, actively exploitable security research that affects real systems right now. Today is October 16th, 2025, when I'm recording this. So for a background, what is 7-Zip? It's a free, open-source file archiver utility created by Igor Pavlov. It was first released in 1999 and has become one of the most popular compression tools in the entire world. Its key features are high compression ratio. It often achieves better compression than competing tools. The native format, it uses the .7z format, which provides excellent compression. It has multi-format support. It can extract and create many archive formats, including zip, rar, tar, gzip, bzip2, and more. It's open source. The source code is freely available under the GNU LGPL license. It's cross-platform, available for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS, and it's completely free for both personal and commercial use. It's achieved this massive adoption for several reasons. One, it's free. Unlike WinRAR, which requires a license, or other commercial solutions, 7-Zip is completely free, no trial period or nag screens. It's powerful. The compression ratios, especially with the 7Z format, are excellent. It outperforms commercial alternatives, and it's lightweight. It has a small installation size and minimal resource usage. Though obviously Igor did a good job. It's trusted. Over 2 decades of development and use have established 7-Zip as reliable software. It integrates well. It adds context menu options to Windows Explorer for easy compression and extraction. And as we've said, open source. Security researchers and developers can examine the code, which theoretically should make it more secure. So there's the ubiquity problem. These vulnerabilities are so significant because 7-Zip is everywhere. It's installed on hundreds of millions of Windows computers. It's commonly pre-installed on many OEM systems. It's standard software in many corporate environments. It's widely used by IT professionals, developers, and power users, and it's often included in software deployment packages. Users trust 7-Zip as legitimate, non-malicious software. Security software typically doesn't flag 7-Zip operations as suspicious. It's just that good. Users routinely open archive files without thinking twice, and organizations whitelist 7-Zip in their security policies. So let's talk about the attack surface here. It handles untrusted data, archive files from the internet, email attachments, and so on. It's often used to open files from unknown or semi-trusted sources. The automatic file association means double-clicking an archive opens it in 7-Zip. There's no sandbox or isolation. It runs with full user privileges. This combination of ubiquity, trust, and exposure to untrusted data makes 7-Zip an attractive target for attackers. A vulnerability in 7-Zip can potentially compromise millions of systems. So it's important to understand that 7-Zip, like most file archivers, operate with a relatively simple security model. The trust assumptions are that archive files are created by trusted entities. The file format itself is not malicious, and parsing and decompression operations are safe. Like we said, no sandboxing. 7-Zip runs with the same privileges as the user who launched it. If you're an administrator, 7-Zip runs as administrator. There are no input validation guarantees. While 7-Zip attempts to handle malformed archives gracefully, it's a complex code base dealing with many formats, and vulnerabilities can slip through. So this brings us to the vulnerabilities we're discussing in this lesson. CVE 2025-11001 and 11002 are closely related vulnerabilities discovered in 7-Zip's handling of zip archives, specifically in how it processes symbolic links. This vulnerability was discovered by Ryota Shiga of GMO Flat Security Inc., working with Takumi-san AI. It was reported to the vendor on May 2nd, 2025. A patch was released on July 5th, 2025. There was public disclosure of this vulnerability on October 7th, 2025 by Trend Micro's Zero-Day Initiative. So the current patched version, 7-Zip 25.01, was released on August 3rd, 2025. So if you have anything above 25.00 is the patched version. The CVSS score was 7.0 for the severity of this vulnerability. The classification is directory traversal leading to remote code execution. The ZDI IDs are ZDI 25949, part of CVE 2025-11001, and ZDI 25950 as part of the 11002 CVE. So whether you're on Linux, Mac OS, Windows, P7-Zip, the Unix Linux port, anything 25 prior, 24X and earlier on Windows, and so on. If you have any of those older versions, you're vulnerable. And given that version 25 was only released in July 2025 and many users don't update regularly, potentially hundreds of millions of installations are still vulnerable today. So the attackers are going to be paying attention to this one. Both CVE 2025-11001 and 2 stem from the same underlying weakness: improper handling of symbolic links within zip archives. A symbolic link, symlink, SYMLINK, is a special type of file that points to another file or directory. It's like a shortcut or alias. When you access a symlink, the operating system follows it to the actual target. The problem is that 7-Zip didn't properly validate symbolic links contained within zip archives. An attacker could craft a malicious 7-Zip file containing symbolic link entries that point outside the intended extraction directory. When 7-Zip processes such an archive, it follows these malicious symlinks and writes files to arbitrary locations on the file system, completely outside the extraction directory where files should be contained. This is dangerous. This is known as a directory traversal vulnerability, also known as a path traversal or .. vulnerability. So the user might extract their zip file. It could contain symlinks that include a bad DLL file. 7-Zip would follow the symlink and write that file, escaping the extraction directory. By placing malicious files in system directories, startup folders, or other sensitive locations, an attacker can achieve arbitrary code execution. So if we think about technically how these vulnerabilities can be exploited, the zip file format supports symbolic links, primarily for compatibility with Unix and Linux systems where symlinks are commonly used. A zip archive can contain an entry marked as a symbolic link, and the entry includes a file name, the name of the symlink, a link target, the path the symlink points to, a file attribute indicating it's a symbolic link. When extracted on Linux, these become valid symlinks that point to the specified paths. This is legitimate and useful for creating archives that preserve Unix file system structures. The vulnerability arises when an attacker crafts that zip file with malicious symbolic links that use this path traversal sequences to escape the extraction directory. Path traversal is using special sequences like .. parent directory to navigate up the directory tree. When that attack happens and 7-Zip extracts this, 7-Zip processes the symlink entry, creates a symbolic link in the extraction directory that points to this other location outside of that. 7-Zip follows the symlink, and when it needs to write payload.dll, let's say, it resolves the symlink path path traversal occurs. The ... // sequence traverses up from the extraction directory. The malicious file can get written. That payload.dll could be written to the Windows System 32 folder instead of staying in the extraction directory, for example. While both 11,001 and 11,002 of these CVEs involve symlink handling, they have subtle differences. 11,001 focuses on one specific manifestation of improper symlink handling that allows directory traversal and arbitrary file write. 11,002 focuses on a related but slightly different code path or condition in the symlink handling that also allows directory traversal. The practical exploitation and impact are essentially the same for both. They're just two different bugs in the same functionality that lead to the same outcome. So a realistic attack scenario could be an attacker's goal would be to gain code execution on the victim system. Step 1, they'd craft the malicious zip file with carefully crafted symlink entries. They'd create a symlink that points to the Windows startup folder, for example, where any executable placed there will run automatically when the user logs in. Step 2 may be social engineering. The attacker delivers the malicious zip to the victim via email attachment, file sharing, compromised website, or messaging apps. You might send it via WhatsApp, Slack, or Teams, and so on. Then the victim opens that archive, double-clicking the malicious zip file to see what's inside. This is where it gets interesting. Exploitation can occur even before extraction. When 7-Zip opens the archive to display its contents in the file manager, it might process the symlinks at that time. Depending on the specific implementation and how automated extraction workflows are configured, the vulnerability can be triggered just by opening the file in 7-Zip's GUI. And then there's exploitation. When 7-Zip processes the zip, creates the symlink pointing to the startup folder, follows the symlink when writing malware.exe, writes malware.exe to the startup folder. And then code execution is the next step. The next time the user logs into Windows, the system automatically runs all programs in the startup folder, including the attacker's malware. The attacker achieves persistent code execution with the same privileges as the victim user. If the victim is a local admin, common on home systems, the malware runs with administrative privileges. There's variations for the attack. The attackers can target different sensitive locations, system directories, user startup folders, program directories, scheduled task locations, browser extension directories. Several factors make these vulnerabilities particularly dangerous. Antivirus may not detect it. The zip file itself may contain benign-looking files. Everything looks okay. The exploitation happens through 7-Zip's legitimate functionality, so there's nothing anomalous happening. And the malicious file is only written to the dangerous location during extraction. Application whitelisting doesn't help. 7-Zip is legitimate software. It's often whitelisted already. The malware is delivered as data, not as an executable download. User education has limited effect because opening zip files seems safe and routine. It has to be done all the time. Although you should know that zip files are always potentially dangerous. Even long before this vulnerability was discovered, you'd never open zip files unless you're absolutely sure. Users have been opening archives for decades, though, many times without issue. So somebody might have done this their whole life and never had a problem, and then all of a sudden, now there's a problem. The exploitation can be completely invisible to the users. They might not know that they've been exploited. Sandboxing is not effective. 7-Zip runs with the user's full privileges, not in a sandbox. The vulnerability is in the trusted application itself. So to exploit this, an attacker needs a crafted zip file. That means they need the technical skill to create a zip with malicious symlinks. They need delivery mechanisms, a way to get the victim to receive the zip file, and they need that user interaction. The victim has to open or extract that malicious zip with 7-Zip. For attack complexity, the CVSS rating indicates high complexity, but this is relative. Creating the malicious zip requires some technical knowledge, but once created, it can be reused against many targets, which means that 99% of the people using it to attack with could be just reusing the same infected file created by one person who knew what they were doing. And the user interaction aspect, it is required, but it's minimal. The victim just needs to open or extract the archive, a common everyday action, but it's one that hopefully people have been warned about anyway. There are no privileges required. The attacker doesn't need any special privileges on the system to create or deliver the malicious zip. If the attacker has admin privileges, it makes it worse, but they don't have to. Potential attack scenarios could be targeted corporate attacks, supply chain attacks, could be compromising software distribution, could be watering hole attacks compromising a popular download site. It could be ransomware deployment, an attacker using the vulnerability for ransomware, encrypting everything, then demanding ransom money for payment to decrypt everything. This vulnerability is particularly dangerous. Several factors elevate the risk. That ubiquity we talked about, installed on hundreds of millions of systems worldwide. The trust people have in being able to use 7-zip without issues for some people their whole lives. Common action, opening zip files is routine and expected behavior. There's no automatic update. 7-zip doesn't have an automatic update mechanisms. Users have to manually check for and install updates. It's cross-platform. The vulnerability affects Windows, Linux, and Mac OS versions. Organizations should monitor for signs of exploitation like file system monitoring. Unexpected files appearing in system directories after zip extraction. Files written to startup folders from 7-zip processes. Take a look at what's in your startup folder. Unusual file writes to program files or system32. 7-zip writing files outside typical extraction directories is a process that should be monitored. Zip files with excessive path traversal sequences. For log analysis, archive extractions that reference paths with that ... sequence. And 7-zip process creating symlinks in unexpected locations. And then for network monitoring, outbound connections from systems after zip file processing. Command and control traffic following archive extraction. Do you have security tools that can track beaconing? That's one of the command and control signals. These vulnerabilities were fixed, so to protect your system, you have to have the latest version. 7-zip now validates symbolic links to ensure they point to locations within the intended extraction directory, so they fixed that. Enhanced boundary checking ensures all file operations remain within the designated extraction directory. If you're downloading the latest copy of 7-zip, make sure you only download it from the official site. Malicious actors often create fake download sites distributing Trojanized versions of popular software. So if you're not careful, you'll click the wrong link to try to make yourself safe with the latest version of 7-zip, and you'll get an even more pre-infected version that's not real. So you don't want that. Just double check to confirm that you're running version 25.01 or later in your system if you're using 7-zip. And regardless of this, users should always be warned about the risk of opening zip files from untrusted sources. There are a lot of exploits and attacks that are associated through the years with zip files. People need to always proceed with caution for unexpected email attachments. Do not click, not even once. If you're in a highly secure environment and you're not sure that everything is completely updated to the latest version, consider temporarily disabling 7-zip usage for all the users. Use alternative archive tools that might not have the vulnerabilities, and use the principle of least privilege, ensuring your users don't run these things with administrative privilege to limit the damage if exploitation does occur. No matter what you're using, staying current with patches makes a huge difference in your security posture. Parsing complex file formats is inherently risky. Zip archives support numerous features, compression methods, encryption, symbolic links, extended attributes that can create a large attack surface. There's been similar issues in image parsers, JPEG, PNG, GIF files, document parsers, PDFs, Office documents, media parsers, videos, audio codecs, and the various archive formats of zip, RAR, and TAR. Any software that parses untrusted file formats should be considered security critical and kept rigorously updated. So security models have to account for vulnerabilities in trusted components. Another reason why defense in depth is essential. So we should remember that 0 days are discovered constantly, and even mature, widely used open source software like 7-zip, which is over 25 years old, still has undiscovered vulnerabilities. No software is perfectly secure. Security is an ongoing process. Defense in depth is essential. So it's a good recent thing to know about. Thank you for your attention, and I will see you in the next lesson.